Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Hamad. I'm a neurosurgery resident in the third year of the neurosurgery program. My talk is more of a documentary than a scientific thing. There's a lot of pictures, not a lot of words, but the main idea of this talk is to show you how my country, Kuwait, developed, and with its development, how health developed, or the healthcare system developed. And I will focus on the neurosurgical part because that's the part I work in, that's my field. So, in the beginning, about Kuwait, raise of hands, who here knows what Kuwait is?
I know what Kuwait is.
Okay, most of you. I was expecting much less, to be honest, mainly why I did this talk. So, Kuwait is an Arabic country, it's in the Middle East, and it's at the absolute end of what used to be called the Persian Gulf, and now we call it the Arabian Gulf. So most people know what Dubai is. The Sea of Dubai is the Arabian Gulf, and at the absolute west tip is the Kuwait. So the reason why it's important to mention this is because Kuwait is a coastal country. It was established in the 1600s. And in the 1600s, it was just a group of nomads that went together and said that we're a country. They didn't have a ruling system, they had no ruler for 100 years. In the 1700s, they decided on one person to be the ruler, Al-Sabah family, who's the ruling government up until today. So 100 years without a government system, no hospitals, no health care for a very long time. And I will mention when we started to have health care. It's a coastal country. This is an actual picture of my ancestors. They used to dive for birds. And for many hundreds of years, it used to be called the Pearl of the Gulf. My country used to be called the Pearl of the Gulf because that's where we got our income. And yeah, they gathered pearls and they sold pearls. That's mostly what we did. Until one day, the Japanese Empire went and made the black pearl, which is the artificial pearl. And my whole ancestors went bankrupt. They had nothing to do because they had dominated the whole world. And until we got a black thing of our own, the oil. So in 1938, oil was discovered in Kuwait. And the Kuwait Oil Company, or KOC as we call it, drilled the first commercial oil well at that time. We were an empire under the UK government, and 38 we discovered the oil, but we didn't really produce it and send it outside up until 1946. 1946, the digging started. This is a map of Kuwait. This is the Arabian Gulf, as I mentioned. This is Kuwait, and every green spot you see here is an oil patch. And the biggest one, Burgan, is the deepest oil well in all of the world. And they say that the last drop of oil will come out of Kuwait because of the Burgan oil. To mention to people outside the Arabic world, oil or petrol in my country is extremely cheap. It actually costs 60% of what water costs. It's 0.17 euros for 1 liter of oil. So when I shared that with one of the guys here, he was like impressed. It's like 8 times more expensive. So the reason why I was mentioning this is because I wanted to show you that our economic system developed in the 1940s. And that shows that we didn't really have the finances to have a health infrastructure up until the 40s, in the late 40s. And this showed because our health system, we didn't have any hospital up until that point, okay? Up until the 1900s, 300 years, no healthcare. Now just a step back, because I'm gonna talk about neurosurgery. Mr. Harvey Cushing, this doctor is what we consider the father of modern neurosurgery. So this Henry Cushing, in 1900s, early 1900s, around 1919, he started developing systematic views of how to operate on patients with neurosurgical conditions. So in around 1919, he was called the father of modern neurosurgery because neurosurgery was seen in ancient civilization, like most specialties. Like you see the Egyptians doing some drilling for the head. Rome, we're in Rome now. They did something where they took a lot of blood from the head and they said your disease comes from having too much blood. But Cushing was the single point where the outcome of patients improved. And that's why we call him the father of modern neurosurgery. And this was 1919. This is in 1948. So we said 46 was oil transferred, 48. First hospital in Kuwait. It used to be called Al Migwa. This hospital was made next to the KOC rig, oil rig, because the need of hospital was mainly due to the having a factory nearby. So people came from outside and they didn't really want to work in a place without a health system. So this was the real reason why Al Migwa was built. It was just a small health center, didn't really have much in it. It wasn't a generalized hospital up until 1960s, until it was transferred into Al Ahmadi Hospital, which we also call the KOC Hospital. People in my country doesn't know that this was called the Southwell Hospital by the foreigners that used to work in our oil rigs, because this hospital was established in 1960, and the person who found the oil and started digging of the oil was an English or a British man called Sir Philip Southwell. And in the last year of him working in Kuwait, 1959, he left and the hospital was under construction. And Al Ahmadi Hospital, or what they call the Southwell Hospital, was established in 1960. So in his honor of what he did for Kuwait, they named the hospital after him. Most people in my country don't really know that. So this is an actual picture of them working in the hospital in front of Al Ahmadi Hospital, and this is the inside of the hospital at that time in the 60s. And this is what KOC Hospital looks like today. It's actually a privatized sector. For the past few years, they made it a full private sector, mainly focused for the KOC workers. And sorry. This is the next general hospital that was done. So KOC was built mainly for oil rig workers, which was far away from civilization. The oil was far from the center of the sea, if you notice, and the sea center or where people used to live, because they used to live for pearl hunting. So this was the first general hospital made mainly for public use. This is called the Sabah Hospital. It is done in 1962. And Al-Ahmadi and Al-Migwa did not have general hospital capabilities as big as the Sabah Hospital. It had subspecialties in it. We had ophthalmology center, orthopedic center, stuff like that. This was the inside of Sabah Hospital at the time. And this is what Sabah Hospital looks like today. Exactly the same. Didn't change a single brick. And now into my bulk of talk, neurosurgery. So you saw the health system develop with economic development of the country. Went very fast after the economic wealth started to establish. Neurosurgery happened after Sabah Hospital, because in Sabah Hospital, at least the orthopedic part of it, in 1969, and because it was in 62, in 1969, the orthopedic hospital had a neurosurgical unit under general surgery. And it was led by Professor Karajoseph. He's a Bulgarian professor, and he's one of the first neurosurgeons under modern neurosurgery in the world. I will show you a newspaper article about that. And he was the first neurosurgeon in Kuwait. 1969 is the time he joined. He was in Sabah Hospital orthopedic part, and he had 3 Kuwaiti students. One of them is Dr. Abbas, which we will talk about later. So Professor Karajoseph established an independent neurosurgical unit in 1976. So it went from orthopedic part into the main Sabah building, and it was an independent unit without a general surgery head in 1976. And this is the newspaper I was talking about. If you know Arabic, you would say that the Bulgarian professor Karajoseph says, I am the first neurosurgeon in Kuwait and one of the 10 first neurosurgeons in the world. So we had this in Kuwait. People don't even know what Kuwait is. We had that things, happening in us. And there's a lot of things here. To me, it's very interesting to see how he used to. This is a very old newspaper. What he used to say, and how he says, these are my children, and Kuwait is my second home, and this is Dr. Abbas Ramadan, one of his main pupils. He went on to be the director of the next hospital I'm going to talk about. And Dr. Abbas Ramadan is how he's a second son to him in all of this. So this takes me to 1981. Ibn Sina Hospital was established It was a tertiary hospital and it is considered the neurosurgical hospital in Kuwait. It's not a general hospital. Neurosurgery went out of Sabah Hospital to be in an independent department alone. We call Ibn Sina Hospital the hospital of specialized surgeries because it has a specialized neurology unit, neurosurgery, pediatric surgery, and it has neuro-ophthalmology capabilities. It's a very small hospital, maximum beds of 260. That's the maximum between all departments. If you see the neurosurgical, the beds are around 40 or 60. So, including the ICU. So, neurosurgery hospital of Ibn Sina was the main point. 1981. That's the point where the development of neurosurgical scientists went extremely well. And I will show you this. But there's a pit stop in between. The Gulf War, the Iraqi War. 1991. The Gulf War. It was if you heard of the Desert Storm, that's what the Desert Storm was. It was the invasion of Iraq into Kuwait. So the Gulf War happened suddenly, because Iraq was our north neighbor. It happened in August 2nd, 1990, and it lasted for 9 months, so it ended in 1991. Operation Desert Storm of the Gulf War was considered the main topic of the world, and we were surprised. We didn't really have an announcement that the war was happening, and we had our allies in Saudi Arabia and the neighboring countries defending us until the US military force came into the country, and within 2 to 3 days they ended the war. So I said it lasted 9 months, a long period. So about this period, I wanted to talk about Ibn Sina Hospital, which was the established neurosurgical center, and how it functioned during the war. So Dr. Abbas Ramadan, the pupil you saw of Dr. Kara-Joseph, was the director of Ibn Sina Hospital, because Dr. Kara-Joseph left Kuwait by the time Ibn Sina was established. So Dr. Abbas Ramadan was the director of Ibn Sina at the war, and he wrote a book. This is the book. Sorry. He wrote a book. It says Memoirs of a Doctor Under Invasion: How the Tent of Neurosurgery Withstood the Invasion. So what I wanted to talk about the war mainly, so that it wouldn't take too much time, was that there were many surgeries happening, but for me as a neurosurgeon, it shows the difference of surgeries that were done, because it shifted towards traumatic surgery. Previously, around 90% of what we call hydrocephalus cases, we do VP shunts or EVDs, like brains, to take the excess of water from the brain of the patient. That was most of the cases at the time. In the war, it was traumatic cases. 80% of the cases were traumas to the head and to the spine, which makes sense, right? It's war. But the Ibn Sina Hospital was not allowed to function unless there was a condition. The Iraqi general or brigadier, his name was Tariq, he was a neurosurgeon and he was the head of the Royal Army Hospital in Iraq. He said, we will allow Ibn Sina to function and you can operate with the condition that Iraqi soldiers get operated on in the same hospital, because it was the hospital that's equipped with neurosurgical equipment. So this was agreed on. Neither party trusted the other. So Iraqi soldiers were operated by the brigadier's team. So they came with a team of around 12 people and they were operated on. And the Kuwaiti soldiers were operated by the Kuwaiti team, which was only 5 doctors at the time, because the rest, we don't have many Kuwaiti doctors, so it was just 5 doctors. Most of them were not Kuwaiti. And those doctors are the only ones that wanted to stay, because you cannot force people to work during war. And what I find most interesting is that the Brigadier Tariq and Dr. Abbas were very close colleagues. So this was written in his book. They were very close colleagues, because neurosurgeons in the world are very small in amount. You know each other, especially with neighboring countries. So they go to conferences together. He mentions this. He used to be my friend. We would go to conferences together, and in one evening, he comes with an army. We were scared for our lives when he talks to us. And we didn't feel the safety of friends when he talked to me as a brigadier of an army. Anyway, the liberation happened in 1991, thankfully. And after the liberation, that's the steps where neurosurgery started developing again. So again, economy was the set point where healthcare improved. War was the obstruction for the healthcare to improve. And now again, back to safety. And we started to have development again. The current leader of neurosurgery, the current director, Dr. Tariq al-Sheikh, since 2008. One of the kindest people you'll ever find in the world. The reason why I joined neurosurgery is Dr. Tariq. It's really nice. And under his care, several services came into neurosurgery. This is Dr. Yasser Abul Hassan. We consider him the establisher of neurocritical care in Kuwait, because Ibn Sina is still the only hospital that has neuro ICU. And Dr. Yasser Abul Hassan is the reason. 2012 it actually started, before Dr. Tariq. He's the establisher of it, and he's still there in Ibn Sina doing his kind of work. This huge step was done in the ICU. It began with 6 beds and developed up until 9 beds, and now there are other hospitals that take the beds, but neurosurgical cases stay in Ibn Sina. The other department is the radiology department. We spoke about MRI earlier. So if you know this about MRI, MRIs are measured with Tesla. Tesla is like the horsepower of the MRI. So when Ibn Sina established, they got a 3 Tesla MRI or 3.5 Tesla MRI, which was one of the 6 MRIs in the world at the time that had that much power. Usually an MRI has half or 1 Tesla at that time. So having 3 Tesla MRI allowed certain things to be done at that time. It was mainly used for fine neurology things, because neurosurgical things are more obvious, things that you can see, you can move. Neurology, if you want to see epilepsy, something like this, you need a specialized MRI that shows you very small lesions. So that was the main use of it. But we had other things that we can use it with, and I'm going to speak about them in the next state. In this picture, you see 2 Serbian doctors. This is Professor Peter, and this is Dr. Lazar. They are still in our department. These are interventional radiologists. They do intervention for vascular abnormalities in the brain. So if you have an aneurysm in the brain, it used to be that you had to do surgery. Now 90% of aneurysms in the brain are dealt with without surgery. They just put a needle, put a wire in, and they close your aneurysm without having any surgery. They do other things like they do AVM. AVM is an arteriovascular malformation, so it's like a web of abnormal vessels. They identify these, they can treat these, they can prepare them for surgery by clotting them so that the surgery is less bleeding. AV fistulas, you name it, any vascular things, they can do it without the surgery. And they do around 280 procedures a year. Those 2 people, that's it. Anytime, any evening. I call one of them, they have to come and they deal with it, and they're very kind as well. They really don't say them. So imagine that, most of the year they're working. Now back to the specialized radiology part. The 3 Tesla MRI allowed us to do something called functional MRI. A functional MRI is when you put the patient in the MRI machine and you ask them to do a function, like play the guitar, speak Spanish, speak English. And you can tell exactly which part of the brain is responsible for speaking Spanish, which one is responsible for speaking English. So you can, before you operate on the patient, you can tell the patient, if you do the surgery, likely you will lose your ability to speak Spanish, but your English will be completely fine. So it allowed that much. And of course, it allowed us as surgeons to do safe surgery with safe resection margins, because I know exactly which one is the function, because each brain has the function set in a different one. So that's what the function is. It's interesting. It's like sci-fi, you know, like MRI and play the guitar. I can tell you, you're not gonna lose playing the guitar. Another thing that allowed us to do is what you can see Dr. Faisal is doing in the screen. This is called MRI Brain Lab, or it's called MRI Brain Neuronavigation. We call it Brain Lab because the company is named Brain Lab. In Kuwait, we like to do that. And the first company is Brain Lab. So you see this device? This is a probe that can be read by a camera. And you fix the patient's head in the operation theater, and you put the MRI CD in the brain lab. And when you move this probe, the patient's MRI moves with you, like a GPS. So using the MRI done before, you set points in the patient's head, and inside the surgery, I can tell where I am exactly in the brain without needing to open a big opening to see it. I can be guided by coordinates. This allowed many things. And Dr. Faisal is a functional neurosurgeon, and one of the things they do is a type of biopsy that's guided by coordinates. So they take exact coordinates and they fix a certain frame where they can, with a very small hole as big as a needle, they can go to the tumor, take a biopsy, and go out with a needle hole. So that's all possible because of the development in technology, which wouldn't happen if neurosurgery stayed in a general hospital. It had to be a tertiary center for these developments to happen. Another thing we use, this is called gamma knife. Gamma knife is a type of stereotactic radiosurgery. Dr. Aftab is one of the main establishers of such a service. So this is done by a neurosurgeon, not by an oncologist, because there is radiotherapy done for tumors, which is done by an oncologist. This is done by a neurosurgeon, and it doesn't do a whole brain radiation. It does this specific radiation just to the lesion you want to target. And you can do this for things other than tumors. You can do it for AV malformation, which is the vascular malformation you mentioned, and other. So this is Dr. Aftab. In 2008, the gamma knife unit was developed, and with Dr. Aftab, it was one of the founding fathers of this, we offered the first service in the Arabian Gulf to do gamma knife. And we received patients for the first 10 years from all over the Arabian Gulf to do the gamma knife in Kuwait. So obviously gamma knife is a method you use for patients to avoid surgery. So it's usually people that were unable to do surgery, so they were too old or had too many comorbidities that they couldn't do this. This is the first day of establishment of the gamma knife. You see Dr. Abbas is there with the other founders, and it says 9th of July 2008. And this is one of the patients that was there. I think she was one of the ambassadors of Africa. So it's not only the services of the hospital itself, but this is the Kuwait Institute of Medical Specialization. We had the board of neurosurgery, which I am part of, developed in 2012. And the board of neurosurgery, this is the inside of that building that comes with me. And it was established in 2012. And again, the board, it is our workers. And we've been trained in Kuwait when we had to leave the country to be trained for neurosurgery. The next step, COVID 2020. COVID hit everyone, and in Kuwait, we didn't really have those big hospitals to accommodate all the patients. So we were in the midst of building the biggest hospital at that time. It's called Jabba Hospital. Jabba Hospital, fast forward its construction in 2020, and they finished the construction. This is a huge hospital. This is the back side of it. So in 2020 it was done, and in 2023 a neurosurgical department under general surgery was started in Jabal Hospital. Same scenario, different place in Kuwait. This is very centralized in Kuwait. This is the inside of Jabal Hospital. And again, more and more advances of technology is adapted in the new hospital. So in 2024, our department or our unit of neurosurgery became an independent department in Java. This was only 1 year ago, 2024. And it housed state-of-the-art technology. This is, if you remember, we mentioned the DSA or the angio that was done by Dr. Peter and Lazar, the interventionists. This is the machine that does the same thing. However, this machine is able to do a CT scan at the bedside. So it's supposed to be an X-ray, but this machine can do a CT scan without taking the patient to somewhere else. And the bed that the patient sits in here, this is actually in the operation theater. And the bed that the patient sits in is an operation bed. Can be raised and left, and there's what we call Mayfield fixation for the patient head that can be installed so that if the patient deteriorates, don't need to take him out and take him somewhere else and send it to another anesthesiologist. You can operate on the patient immediately. This is a picture of myself and Dr. Gurbani. She's not wearing a mask because consultants are immune of infection. This is myself and Dr. Gurbani. I took permission to post these pictures. We were doing DSA for a patient with very interesting findings. Actually, I think he told me this was the 8th in the world. He's specialized in doing neurovascular interventions. He's a neurosurgeon. They can do DSA as well in neurology and radiology and neurosurgery. So it was about a patient with a spinal dilation of the veins. So he said it was the 8th in the world, and all case reports, and the patients come to him because he's specialized in this. And yeah, we were doing the DSA for the patient we diagnosed, and we embolized. We put a type of cement called onyx, and we closed these without a surgery, without removing the veins. This is the paper that we posted about the development of this in Kuwait. And thank you very much.
Sorry. Concerning the functional MRI,
Yes.
is it just for the brain? This is the first time I
We-
heard about functional MRI.
So a functional MRI, we use it to see the function. So for the spine, we don't need it for the function of the spine. We do something called EMG, and we can measure the power of the patient's function in the spine. Another thing we do for spinal lesions, if we have a lesion that's inside the spine, we do neuromonitoring intraoperatively. So we call in one of the 3 specialists we have, and they put rods in the patient while they are under surgery. The anesthesia needs to not put muscle relaxant. You're an ICU doctor, you know why that's needed. And they measure the nerves inside the surgery. And if I'm manipulating the nerve, he would tell me, no, be careful, you're manipulating this nerve. You're too much into the nerve, and I would limit my dissection. So if I need the function of the spine, I would do it real time intraoperatively. But if I need it for the brain, I can't really do that. I either make the patient awake, and I do an awake surgery, and I ask the patient to talk, which you can imagine is not very nice to the patient. And he talks, and I know that I'm at the speech center. And I manipulate, and they cannot talk anymore. Yeah, this is the speech center, so I stop. Functional MRI stopped us from doing awake surgeries. Unless we don't have it because the machine is not working, or the doctor, the radiologist that needs to do it is not available, then we will do the awake. Anything?